if our intelligence community is supposed to protect us, we have a pretty serious question. Why have they been hiding all this from the American public? And why is Donald Trump only the first president to unlock the key and let us see it? We're just starting to get active measures going again to find out why these things happen, how much of it happened. It's going to take us months to get there, I assume, but at least now the people who are in the dark are in the know now, and it allows us to follow the roadmap and see how many more people. When you ask how many non-citizens or foreigners are in a position to vote in the election, the documents that we got declassified through the president last month give us an answer. In just 18 states that they looked at, less than half the country, they found 270,000 plus non-citizens who made it on the voter rolls. And the Democrats immediately said, lie, not true. And their media friends said, lie, not true. And then New Jersey's governor came out and said, oh, no, it's true. I had 6,600 on my voter rolls, and 400 of them actually got to vote. 400 foreigners voted in New Jersey federal elections. Largest group we've ever seen in history. So the president's recent declassifications are already having a domino effect, but it'll take us 6 months to a year to figure out what China accomplished, what Venezuela accomplished, what the foreigners that got on voter rolls, did they vote in large numbers or just the 400 in New Jersey? But the good news is after 6 years of being kept in the dark, the process has begun. We've removed the veil, and now we can get to the bottom of the truth.
So I just want to maybe we shatter one myth of the 2020 election, which is that it was the most secure election in American history. It was perhaps the least secure election in American history. I'm sure you would contend, you would agree with that.
It certainly was a far less secure election than we were led to believe. We were given a sugar pill in December of 2020, and it wasn't true.
And then, so let's shatter the next myth of the 2020 election, which is that the electronic voting machines were secure. You just said in your last answer that Venezuela can just straight up switch out electronically the votes. Please.
Yep. So beginning in January of 2020, the same time they warned about the vulnerabilities of the voter registration data, the intelligence community unanimously, albeit secretly, assessed that American voting machines could be compromised by 5 foreign powers. There are 5 foreign powers who could take the known vulnerabilities of the machines and potentially flip votes: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela. They knew what the vulnerabilities were at that point. Nobody acted in the Trump presidency, at the end of Trump 1, or at any time in the Biden presidency to close those vulnerabilities down. And that becomes even more alarming when you realize 9 months after the first warning in January 2020, in September 2020, the CIA detected Venezuela taking a voter machine that worked a lot like American machines. It wasn't an American machine, but it had a lot of the protocols that we use here, so it was relevant to the United States. And they were able, in a controlled environment, to swap out votes. Now, it wasn't in a real election. It was a test. It was in a test environment. But they were able to get through the encryption, take out the votes that were filed, put in fake ballots and fake numbers, and then send them up to the central repository as part of a test. That was a red alarm inside the intelligence community, but you know what? Other than reporting it internally, secretly, nothing changed. And so we went through the 2020 election, the 2022 election, and the 2024 election with those same vulnerabilities sitting there. We basically stuck a glass chin out and told a foreign power, come on and punch us, because we haven't told the states, we haven't told the president, we haven't told the Congress. Now, to date, I've not seen anything, Benny, that said that a foreign power exploited and flipped votes. I haven't found a document yet that says any votes have flipped in any election. But it is gross negligence for our intelligence committee to have left that glass chin unfixed for 6 months. Just because a foreign power didn't do it didn't mean it was the right thing to do. We should have hardened our defenses. That's why we have an intelligence committee. They left us with a glass chin for 6 years, and that is no longer in doubt. That is no longer a conspiracy theory. It's another one that came true.
So instead of talking about the actual capacity of a foreign power like China or Russia or Venezuela to rig our elections or to seed agitation movements against our democracy, I'm blown away at how correct we were saying that BLM and Antifa and all of that was foreign funded, and that was just
exactly what the documents show.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Yes. So way to go. You're literally working on behalf of the Ayatollah, right? If you were posting the black squares. Great job, everyone. However, our intelligence agencies were thrilled and excited in order to talk about foreign interference when it comes to President Trump and to say that he's a Russian agent when he fired James Comey.
Can you believe that? You can't make it up?
You can't make it up. James Comey, weirdly enough, he told us this in his Oxford comma tweet. ALX, I don't know if you can grab that and we pop that up.
Yeah,
but anyway, just really quickly, that's a big, a story that also broke this week. Really quickly, could you touch on that and then please tie it into the grand conspiracy, please, and the grand jury, and how do they intersect?
If we want to talk about election interference, the single largest proof that we now have is that the single greatest intrusion on American democracy has not yet come from China. It could someday, because of the vulnerabilities we allowed to exist, the voter files being swept up. It hasn't come from Russia, hasn't come from Iran or North Korea or Venezuela. It has come from our own intelligence and law enforcement agencies, who have not only put a thumb on the scale of an election, they have put their entire damn body on the scale. They launched a fake investigation on Donald Trump in July of 2016 that he was a Russian stooge of Vladimir Putin, knowing that it was faked by Hillary Clinton. They knew it as they were opening the investigation. They did months. They found out that there was no Russia collusion. As Bill Barnett, in the document I made public yesterday, a longtime FBI agent, trusted guy, not a politician, just a good agent, said, I found no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. All that, there was no collusion, was decided by January of 2017 as Donald Trump is coming in. The will of the people are that they elected Donald Trump. The will of the deep state, of the CIA and the FBI and the Justice Department, was to not let the person the American people voted into office succeed. And so they continue an investigation that they know is wrong, that is not based on predicate information. Remember, the Biden Justice Department released John Durham's report in 2023. What did it say? There wasn't an iota of evidence to justify the opening or sustaining of the Russia collusion investigation from summer of 16 to spring of 2019. That's the Biden Justice Department putting that out. They had to admit that. We're in May now, May of 17. The scandal is being percolated by Pulitzer Prize winning places like the New York Times based on stories that were never true. And the FBI knows definitively that there is no Russia collusion. In fact, Pete Strzok, the most famous of the FBI agents in the case, and the one that had the affair and all that stuff, he writes his lover that very week that they open up the case, Oxford comma, there's no big there. In other words, there's no Russia collusion. Despite that, despite what Agent Barnes said, despite the fact that the CIA had told the FBI that Carter Page wasn't a Russian stooge but a CIA asset, despite the fact that Mike Flynn had been cleared of any collusion, despite the fact that the Steele dossier had been completely debunked, the Hillary Clinton funded Steele dossier, the FBI decides that after James Comey is fired for, by the way, not anything he did to Donald Trump, but for mishandling the investigation of Hillary Clinton, they decide to open up a case saying, we believe that Donald Trump was acting at the behest of Vladimir Putin when he fired James Comey in May. And then Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General for Donald Trump, this is Donald Trump's appointee, he takes that case and he throws it over the fence and says, we need Bob Mueller and another 2 years of a special prosecutor. I just want to point out one thing about Rod Rosenstein. When he makes that decision, when he takes that case, Oxford comma, which has not an iota of evidence to justify that Donald Trump fired James Comey because he was a Russian asset. There was no proof he was a Russian asset. Rod Rosenstein knows the truth. You know why? He's the guy that wrote the memo that approved the firing of James Comey. He wrote the memo saying James Comey was fired because he violated Justice Department rules when he meddled in the Hillary Clinton email case. He knows that, and yet he takes a fake investigation, throws it over a fence, creates a multi-million-dollar special prosecutor investigation, and extends the Russian fake narrative for 2 more years. The victims aren't just Donald Trump. The victims are all the American people, because the Trump presidency was hampered by that decision.
And the grand jury, real quickly, with the grand conspiracy?
Most of the people who've looked at the stuff we put out say these are all overt acts. If Joe DeGenova and the prosecutors want to do this in Florida, these are things that you would call overt acts in a series. Wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Violate Donald Trump's civil liberties here. Do it here. Do it here. Do it here. Violate the will of the American people. So these things that we're putting out, the lawyers that I'm talking say, hey, those look like they could be made into overt acts in a conspiracy indictment. Let's see if that happens.